I took the job because I owed $43,000 to a hospital in Billings that had kept my mother alive for 11 extra months. Debt collectors don't care about grief. They care about payment plans. When I saw the posting for a geothermal infrastructure monitor at Yellowstone, GSC-11, $52,000 annually, housing provided, immediate start, I applied within the hour. The drive from Bozeman took longer than expected. Snow in late October had already dusted the passes, and my truck's heater worked in bursts. I arrived at the north entrance at 4:17 in the afternoon, showed my ID to a ranger who barely glanced at it, and followed the directions I'd been given to the operations annex near Mammoth Hot Springs. The annex was a squat concrete building behind the main visitor facilities, painted the same institutional brown as everything else in the park. No signs marked it. I parked in the gravel lot beside a white government pickup and a rusted Subaru with Montana plates. A woman named Mackie met me at the door. She was perhaps 60, with short gray hair and the kind of face that had stopped smiling professionally decades ago. She wore the standard Park Service uniform, but with an additional patch I didn't recognize, a black circle with a white line through it, stitched above her left pocket. "You're Ellison," she said. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am." She handed me a manila folder, a ring of 7 keys on a carabiner, and a handheld radio already set to channel 4. "Read everything in that folder tonight, all of it. You start at 6 tomorrow morning, Station 11. I looked at the folder. It was thick, maybe 40 pages. "Station 11 is underground?" I asked. "Partially. The monitoring equipment is in a service tunnel beneath the Norris Geyser Basin. You'll be checking thermal sensors, logging pressure readings, maintaining seals on the access points." She paused. "And following the protocols exactly as written." "Protocols for what?" Mackie looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something in her expression that I couldn't name. Not fear, exactly. Something more practiced than fear. "Read the folder," she said. "Housing is the 3rd cabin past the maintenance yard. Heat works. Water's potable. Don't leave your cabin between 11 at night and 5 in the morning unless you're on shift." She turned and walked back into the annex. The door closed behind her with a heavy click. The cabin was small but functional. Single room with a cot, a propane heater, a small table, and a bathroom with a shower that produced lukewarm water. I set my duffel on the cot and sat at the table with the folder. The first 20 pages were standard government paperwork, tax forms, emergency contacts, liability waivers. I signed where indicated and set them aside. The next section was labeled Station 11 Operational Procedures. I expected technical specifications for the monitoring equipment. Instead, I found a list. The list was typed on plain white paper, single-spaced, with no letterhead or date. It read, 1. You will arrive at Station 11 no earlier than 6 in the morning and no later than 6:15 in the morning. The access hatch must be sealed behind you by 6:18 in the morning. If you cannot seal the hatch by 6:18 in the morning, do not enter the tunnel. Return to the annex and report to your supervisor. 2. The monitoring station contains 6 thermal sensors, 4 pressure gauges, and 1 seismograph. You will log readings from each instrument at 30-minute intervals, beginning at 6:30 in the morning. Readings must be recorded in the red logbook stored in the equipment cabinet. Do not use any other logbook. 3. Between the hours of 2 in the afternoon and 2:45 in the afternoon, you will hear sounds from the lower tunnel. These sounds may include footsteps, breathing, or voices. Do not investigate. Do not respond. Continue your work. The sounds will stop at 2:45 in the afternoon. 4. If the temperature reading on sensor 3 drops below 42 degrees Fahrenheit at any time, cover the vent grate beside the sensor with the provided tarp and secure it with the yellow clamps. Do not look into the vent while covering it. Keep your eyes on the clamps. 5. You will receive a radio check from the annex on channel 4 at 9 in the morning, 12 noon, 3 in the afternoon, and 6 in the evening. Respond with your station number and the phrase readings nominal or readings anomalous. If the radio check comes on any channel other than channel 4, do not respond. Switch your radio off for 15 minutes, then switch it back to channel 4. 6. The lower tunnel is accessible via a steel door at the north end of the monitoring station. This door must remain locked at all times. You have been given a key to this door. Do not use it. If you hear knocking from the other side of the door, do not acknowledge it. Do not speak. Do not approach the door. Remain at your station until the knocking stops. 7. If you see another person in the tunnel who is not your scheduled relief, verify their identity by asking for the daily code word. The code word changes at midnight and is provided via your morning radio check. If the person cannot provide the correct code word, do not speak to them further. Do not look at their face. Walk to the access hatch and exit the tunnel. Do not run. 8. At 5:45 in the evening, you will begin shutdown procedures. This involves powering down all sensors in reverse numerical order. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, with a 60-second interval between each. Do not deviate from this order or timing. 9. You must exit through the access hatch by 6 in the evening. The hatch will be locked externally at 6:03 in the evening. If you are still inside when the hatch locks, proceed to the emergency shelter at the south end of the monitoring station and then wait. Do not attempt to exit through any other route. Relief will arrive at 6 in the morning. 10. Do not bring food into the tunnel. Do not bring photographs. Do not bring any item that belonged to someone who has died. 11. If the lights in the tunnel flicker 3 times in rapid succession, close your eyes and count to 120. Do not open your eyes before reaching 120. When you open your eyes, verify that you are still in the monitoring station by touching the equipment cabinet. If you cannot locate the equipment cabinet, do not move. Call for radio check on channel 4. 12. There is a mirror mounted above the sink in the monitoring station's small washroom. After 3 in the afternoon, do not use this washroom. If you must use it before 3 in the afternoon, do not look in the mirror. I read the list 3 times. Then I put the folder down and stared at the cabin wall for a long time. I told myself it was hazing. Government workers had their own culture, their own jokes. Someone had probably written this list years ago to spook new hires, and it had become tradition. But Mackie's face stayed with me. The way she'd said protocols. I slept poorly that night. The wind off the mountains rattled the cabin's single window, and twice I woke to sounds I couldn't identify. A low, rhythmic thumping that seemed to come from beneath the floor. Both times, I lay still and listened until it stopped. At 5:30 in the morning, my alarm went off. I dressed in layers, ate a granola bar, and walked through the pre-dawn darkness to the operations annex. Mackie was waiting with a thermos of coffee and a slip of paper. "Today's code word is basalt," she said. "Tomorrow it will be different. Check your radio at 6:15 for the new word." I read the protocols, I said. "Good. They're not real, the list. It's some kind of joke. Mackie poured coffee into the thermos cap and handed it to me. Steam rose in the cold air. Station 11 has been staffed continuously since 1987, she said. In that time, we've had 19 monitors. 11 of them followed the protocols exactly. Those 11 finished their contracts and transferred to other positions. She paused. The other 8 did not follow the protocols exactly. What happened to them? Varied. She took back the thermos cap. Some quit without notice. Some had to be removed. 2 are still listed as missing persons. She looked at me with that same expression from yesterday. Practiced, careful. Follow the protocols, Ellison. Don't improvise. Don't rationalize. Don't assume you understand what you're dealing with. What am I dealing with? I don't know, she said. None of us know. We just know the rules work. The drive to Station 11 took 20 minutes on roads that weren't marked on any public map. I parked in a small clearing beside a boulder, painted with the number 11 in faded yellow. The access hatch was 50 yards into the trees, a metal door set into a concrete collar rising 2 feet from the forest floor. I checked my watch. 6:04 in the morning. I unlocked the hatch with the smallest key on the ring. The metal groaned as I pulled it open. Below, a steel ladder descended into darkness. I switched on my flashlight and climbed down. The monitoring station was exactly as described in the supplementary materials. A concrete room roughly 30 feet by 20 feet, lined with equipment cabinets and instrument panels. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, already on, though I didn't know who had activated them. The air smelled of mineral deposits and something faintly organic, like old leaves. I sealed the hatch behind me at 6:14 in the morning, 4 minutes ahead of schedule. The first reading was due at 6:30. I located the red logbook in the equipment cabinet, verified it matched the serial number in my documentation, and began my rounds. Sensor 1, 78 degrees. Sensor 2, 81 degrees. Sensor 3, 76 degrees. Sensor 4, 92 degrees. Sensor 5, 88 degrees. Sensor 6, 104 degrees. Pressure gauges all within normal range. Seismograph showing minimal activity. I logged the readings in careful handwriting and time-stamped the entry. The morning passed slowly. I completed readings at 7, 7:30, 8, 8:30. The radio check came at 9 exactly. Mackie's voice flat and professional. Station 11, Annex, status. Station 11, I replied. Readings nominal. Copy. Code word for tomorrow is feldspar. Annex out. I wrote feldspar on the back of my hand. At 11:30, I used the washroom. The mirror above the sink was small and spotted with age. I saw my own face, tired and pale, and nothing else. I washed my hands and returned to the monitoring station. At 12 noon, the radio check repeated. Readings nominal. I ate a protein bar I'd brought against regulations. The list said no food, but I'd assumed that was part of the hazing, and immediately felt uneasy. I wrapped the remaining half in its foil and put it in my jacket pocket, resolving to throw it away when I exited. At 1:45 in the afternoon, I began watching the clock. 2 in the afternoon arrived. For the first 12 minutes, nothing happened. I logged my 1:30 reading, checked the seismograph, adjusted the gain on Sensor 4's display. The fluorescent lights hummed. The equipment cabinets ticked with the small sounds of electronics doing their work. At 2:12 in the afternoon, I heard footsteps. They came from the lower tunnel, beyond the steel door at the north end of the station. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, like boots on concrete. They moved in a slow rhythm. Step, step, pause. Step, step, pause. I stopped what I was doing and listened. The protocol said the sounds would include footsteps, breathing, or voices. The protocol said not to investigate, not to respond. I stood very still at my station and watched the steel door. It was painted gray and had no window. The locking mechanism was a heavy deadbolt that required the key I'd been told not to use. The footsteps continued. Step, step, pause. Step, step, pause. They seemed to be circling something or pacing a fixed route. At 2:19 in the afternoon, the footsteps stopped. I heard breathing then, deep, slow inhalations and exhalations. Not labored, calm, patient. At 2:31 in the afternoon, a voice said my name. It came from beyond the door, clear and unmistakable. Ellison. I didn't move. I didn't respond. Ellison, the voice said again. It sounded like a man, middle-aged, with no particular accent. You can come down now. It's safe. I gripped the edge of the equipment cabinet and focused on the pressure gauge in front of me. 23 psi, normal range. Ellison, we need your help down here. There's been an accident. The voice was reasonable, concerned, exactly the kind of voice you would respond to without thinking. I didn't respond. At 2:38 in the afternoon, the voice changed. It became a woman's voice, higher, softer, with a faint tremor of fear. Please, it said. Please, I'm hurt. I can't move. Please help me. I closed my eyes and counted my breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The protocol said the sounds would stop at 2:45. Why won't you help me? The woman's voice asked. Why won't anyone help me? At 2:44 in the afternoon, the voice stopped mid-sentence, as if someone had pressed a mute button. The silence that followed was absolute. I opened my eyes. The steel door was unchanged. The monitoring station was unchanged. I was alone. At 2:45 in the afternoon, I logged my readings with hands that shook only slightly. The rest of the shift passed without incident. I completed my readings, received my radio checks, and began shutdown procedures at 5:45 exactly. I powered down the sensors in reverse order. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Waiting 60 seconds between each. I exited through the access hatch at 5:53 in the evening and sealed it behind me. The lock clicked home. I stood in the clearing and breathed forest air until my heart rate returned to normal. When I got back to my cabin, I threw away the half-eaten protein bar. I wouldn't bring food again. The second week was when I started to understand. Every day brought the same patterns. Arrive by 6:15, seal the hatch, log readings every 30 minutes, endure the sounds between 2 and 2:45, complete shutdown, exit by 6. The routine became mechanical. I stopped thinking about what I was doing and simply did it. The sounds from the lower tunnel varied. Some days it was only footsteps, that same slow, circling rhythm. Other days, I heard what might have been singing, low and tuneless, in a language I couldn't identify. Once I heard laughter, sudden and brief, like someone had told a joke just out of earshot. I never responded. I never investigated. On the 9th day, the temperature on sensor 3 dropped below 42 degrees. I noticed it at 11:17 in the morning, during my 11 o'clock reading. Sensor 1 through 6 had all been in their normal ranges: 74, 79, 71, 88, 84, 97, except for sensor 3. The digital display read 39 degrees Fahrenheit. I retrieved the tarp from the supply cabinet. It was heavy canvas, roughly 4 feet square, and the edges were reinforced with grommets. The yellow clamps were spring-loaded, designed to grip the metal frame of the vent grate beside the sensor. The vent grate was set into the floor, 18 inches by 12 inches, with slats angled downward into darkness. I positioned myself beside it, keeping my eyes on the tarp and clamps. I did not look into the vent. I spread the tarp over the grate and began attaching the clamps. First corner, second corner. The clamps clicked into place with a satisfying snap. Third corner. As I reached for the fourth corner, I felt a breath of air rise through the tarp. Cold air, much colder than 39 degrees. Cold enough to burn, and I smelled something. It was not sulfur, though Yellowstone's geothermal features often smelled of sulfur. It was not mineral or chemical. It was biological. The smell of meat left too long in the sun, mixed with something sweeter underneath, something almost floral. I attached the fourth clamp and stepped back. The tarp settled over the grate. The cold air stopped. I logged the anomaly in the red logbook. 11:17 a.m., sensor 3. Temp drop to 39 degrees. Temperature, vent is 3 covered per protocol. 4. No visual contact with vent interior. At 11:32, the temperature on sensor 3 began to rise. By noon, it was back to 73 degrees. I removed the tarp at 12:15 and stowed it in the supply cabinet. I didn't tell Mackie about the smell. The protocols didn't mention smell. On the 14th day, I met the night shift monitor. His name was Carver, and he'd been working Station 11 for 3 years. He was my opposite number. I worked 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening. He worked 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning. We'd never crossed paths because the protocols were designed to prevent it. When I exited, the hatch locked. When Carver entered, the hatch sealed again. 2 people, 1 station, no overlap. But on the 14th day, there was a scheduling conflict. The annex had called me in for additional training on the seismograph calibration, which meant my shift ended at 4 in the afternoon instead of 6. Carver arrived at 4:30 to begin his early prep. We met in the parking area by the boulder. Carver was younger than I expected, late 20s, with a beard that needed trimming and eyes that moved constantly, scanning the tree line, the access hatch, the shadows between the pines. "You're Ellison," he said. "Yeah." "How's it going?" "Fine," I said. "Following the protocols." Carver nodded. He had the same look Mackie did, that practiced caution, like a man walking through a room full of unstable explosives. "The night shift is different," he said. "Different how?" He seemed to weigh his words. "The protocols are longer, more specific, and the sounds." He trailed off, staring at the access hatch. "During the day, they stay behind the door. At night, they move around more. You hear them in the walls, in the ceiling, sometimes right outside the hatch." "But they can't get in," I said. "Right?" Carver looked at me then, and I saw something in his expression that wasn't practiced at all. It was raw and recent. "They can't get in as long as you follow the protocols," he said. "Every rule exists because someone broke it. Every protocol is a line that something tried to cross. What happens if you break a rule? Depends on the rule." He checked his watch. "I need to prep. Good luck, Ellison." He walked toward the access hatch. I watched him descend into the darkness, and then I drove back to the annex. That night, I asked Mackie about the night shift protocols. She gave me a copy without comment, 12 pages, single-spaced, with amendments dated as recently as 6 months ago. I read them in my cabin by flashlight, even though the power was working fine. The night protocols were everything Carver had said, and more. They included rules about reflective surfaces, all mirrors to be covered between 10 at night and 4 in the morning, rules about sound discipline, no speaking above a whisper after midnight, and rules about movement, specific routes through the station that must be followed exactly, with distances measured in paces. One rule stood out. Between 1:45 and 2:30 in the morning, you will hear knocking on the access hatch. The knocking will follow a pattern. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, pause, 1 knock. This is the entry signal used by relief personnel during emergencies. Do not open the hatch. Relief personnel do not arrive between 1:45 and 2:30 in the morning. Any entity using the correct entry signal during this window is not relief personnel. I set the papers down and stared at the cabin wall. Any entity. Mackie had said she didn't know what we were dealing with. I was starting to think that was true. The protocols weren't written by people who understood the threat. They were written by people who had survived it, one rule at a time, each protocol purchased with someone's mistake. The 3rd week brought the amendments. I found them in the red logbook when I arrived for my shift on day 16. A new page had been inserted, handwritten in neat block letters, signed by someone with the initials RV. The date was 2 days ago, a date I had worked, which meant someone had entered the station after my shift and before Carver's. The amendments read, Amendment A, effective immediately. All personnel will verify seal integrity on the north door before logging their first reading. Verification consists of 3 tests: visual inspection for gaps in the frame, physical pressure test on the locking mechanism, and thermal check of the door surface using the handheld sensor stored in cabinet 3. If the door surface reads below 50 degrees or above 120 degrees, do not proceed with standard operations. Radio the annex immediately and await instructions. Amendment B. The washroom may now be used at any time. The mirror has been removed. Amendment C. If you hear your name spoken by a voice you recognize, someone you know personally, not merely someone you have met, do not respond. Do not acknowledge the voice. Do not think about the person whose voice you heard. Focus on an object in the monitoring station and describe it to yourself in detail until the voice stops. Amendment D. The sounds between 2 in the afternoon and 2:45 in the afternoon may now occur at irregular intervals. If sounds begin before 2 in the afternoon or continue past 2:45 in the afternoon, note the exact start and end times in the logbook and continue following Protocol 3. Amendment E. If Sensor 6 registers a temperature above 150 degrees, do not log the reading. Write stable in the logbook and proceed with your next task. Do not look at Sensor 6 again for 30 minutes. Amendment F. Personnel may occasionally observe a light source in the lower tunnel, visible through the gap beneath the north door. This light source is not associated with any authorized equipment. Do not investigate. If the light source changes color from white to amber, cover the gap beneath the door with the provided draft stopper and do not remove it until your shift ends. I read the amendments 3 times, then performed the new door verification as my first task. The seal was intact. The thermal reading was 62 degrees. I proceeded with standard operations. At 1:47 in the afternoon, the sounds began. This was new. The protocol said 2 in the afternoon. The sounds had never started early before. I stopped logging and listened. Footsteps again, but different this time. Faster, more urgent. They weren't pacing anymore. They were searching. I could hear them moving through the space beyond the door, covering ground, stopping abruptly, changing direction. At 1:52 in the afternoon, the footsteps stopped directly on the other side of the north door. I heard breathing, close, just on the other side of 2 inches of steel, then knocking. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, pause, 1 knock, the entry signal. "Station 11 relief," a voice said. Male, neutral, professional. "Open the hatch, emergency situation." This wasn't the hatch. This was the north door, the one I'd been told never to open. But the voice had used the correct signal. The voice had followed the protocol for emergency relief. I didn't move. "Ellison," the voice said. "This is a direct order. Open the door." The voice knew my name. The voice sounded exactly like someone who had authority over me. I walked to the equipment cabinet and opened it. Inside was my thermos, my logbook, and the emergency radio backup. I picked up the thermos, a physical object, real and solid, and described it to myself in silence. Stainless steel, 16 ounces, blue cap with a pressure seal. Dented on the left side where I dropped it on day 3. Warm to the touch from the coffee inside. "Ellison, this is Carver. I need you to open the door." Carver worked nights. Carver was not scheduled to be here. I continued describing the thermos. "Please," the voice said, and now it was softer, younger, feminine. "Please, I'm so cold. It's so dark down here. Please let me in." The threaded cap has 12 rotations from closed to open. The interior is vacuum sealed. The manufacturer's label has worn off, but the serial number is still visible. K7X9944. The voice stopped. The footsteps retreated, slowly, deliberately, back into the lower tunnel. At 2:51 in the afternoon, the sounds ended completely. I logged the anomaly. 1:47 p.m., sounds began early. 1:52 p.m., direct interaction at north door. Entry signal used, voice impersonation attempted, multiple. Followed Amendment C, contact ended 2:51 p.m. When Mackie reviewed my logbook that evening, she didn't say anything. She just added a note in the margin. "Good, keep following the protocols." On day 19, I saw something in the tunnel. It was during my 3 in the afternoon reading, well after the sounds had stopped. I was checking sensor 4 when motion registered in my peripheral vision. A shape, low and quick, crossing the space near the north door. I didn't look directly at it. That wasn't a protocol yet, but something in me knew better. I continued my reading. 86 degrees. Normal. The shape moved again. This time I got a sense of its size. Small, maybe 2 feet tall, moving on what might have been 4 legs or arms. The proportions were wrong for any animal I knew. It moved toward the supply cabinet, then stopped. I felt it watching me. I logged the sensor 4 reading and moved to sensor 5. My hands were steady. My breathing was controlled. I did not look at the shape. After 30 seconds, I heard it move again, a soft, scuttling sound like dry leaves or old paper. And then the sound faded toward the north door. When I finished my round, I looked at the space near the supply cabinet. Nothing was there. I checked the logbook for similar entries. Carver had written one, dated 3 weeks before I started. Small shape observed moving independently, non-hostile, does not respond to light or sound, likely reconnaissance. Reconnaissance for what, he didn't say. The 5th week was when Dawson arrived. Dawson was a new hire, like me, brought in to cover the overflow from a park-wide staffing shortage. She was assigned to Station 9, a similar monitoring post 3 miles south of my position. We met at the morning briefing on day 32. She was young, maybe 25, with the kind of confidence that comes from never having been seriously wrong about anything important. She listened to Mackey's orientation with visible skepticism, asking questions that had obvious answers. So the rules are supposed to protect us from what exactly? From making mistakes, Mackey said. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. After the briefing, I approached Dawson in the parking lot. I've been here a month, I said. The rules are real. Whatever you think you understand about this job, forget it. Follow the protocols. Dawson looked at me with the kind of expression people reserve for the mentally ill. You actually believe something's down there? I don't know what's down there. That's the point. Neither do you. She shrugged and walked to her vehicle. I watched her drive towards Station 9 and felt something like dread settle into my stomach. 3 days later, Station 9 went silent. The evening radio check came at 6 exactly. Station 11 responded. That was me. Station 10 responded. Station 9 did not respond. Mackey tried again at 6:15. No response. At 6:30, a 2-person recovery team was dispatched. They found the access hatch open. The interior lights were on. The monitoring equipment was running normally. Dawson wasn't there. The red logbook was found on the floor beside the north door. Her last entry was timed at 4:17 in the afternoon. Movement in lower tunnel. Going to investigate. That was all. The recovery team searched the lower tunnel for 200 yards. They found Dawson's flashlight, still on, lying in the middle of the passage. They found one of her boots, unlaced, positioned upright, as if she had just stepped out of it. They did not find Dawson. The search was called off at 8 in the evening due to safety protocols. I knew what that meant. The night rules were in effect. Whatever had taken Dawson was now more active. Mackey called a mandatory meeting the next morning. Station 9 is temporarily closed, she said. We're implementing new protocols across all stations, effective immediately. She handed out printed sheets. More amendments. Amendment G. No personnel will enter any lower tunnel for any reason without explicit authorization from the operations annex. Authorization must be verified by 2 independent radio contacts on different channels. Amendment H. If you observe equipment functioning normally in the absence of power, lights on when the breaker is off, sensors recording when disconnected, do not interact with the equipment. Radio the annex and wait for instructions. Amendment W. The sounds may now include sounds of equipment failure, such as alarms, warning tones, or emergency broadcasts. Unless the sound is accompanied by visual confirmation on your instrument panel, do not respond to audio-only alerts. Amendment J. If you observe another person in the tunnel, verify their identity by asking for the daily code word and their badge number. Valid badge numbers begin with the letter K. If the person cannot provide both verifications, or if their badge number begins with any letter other than K, follow Protocol 7 immediately. Amendment K. Do not look at any reflection, water, glass, polished metal, after 3 in the afternoon. This includes the reflection in powered-off monitor screens. Amendment L. The small shape previously observed may now approach within 10 feet of personnel. If it approaches, stop all movement and close your eyes. Begin counting backward from 100. The shape will leave. Resume operations when you reach 0. I read the amendments and felt the weight of their implications. Every new rule was a response to something that had happened. Someone had interacted with unpowered equipment. Someone had responded to a false alarm. Someone had looked at a reflection. Someone had opened a door they shouldn't have opened. The 7th week brought the siege. It started on day 45 A Tuesday with weather. The forecast had called for light snow. What we got was a blizzard, 18 inches in 6 hours, with winds gusting to 50 miles per hour. The roads to the monitoring stations became impassable. Communications grew spotty. Power fluctuated across the park. I was already at Station 11 when the storm hit. I'd arrived at 6:08 in the morning, sealed the hatch at 6:13, and begun my standard routines. By 9 o'clock, the snow was falling so heavily that I could hear it accumulating on the hatch above me. A soft, constant pressure. The 9 o'clock radio check came through, broken and static-filled. Station 11 NX. Stop. I keyed my response. Station 11. Readings nominal. Repeat. Readings nominal. Do you copy? Nothing but static. At 9:14, the static cleared momentarily, and I heard Mackey's voice, strained and rapid. Emergency protocols now in effect. All stations shelter in place. Do not attempt exit until all clear. Repeat, emergency protocols. The signal cut out. I retrieved the emergency protocols from the equipment cabinet. I'd read them before, but never under these conditions. They covered 3 pages and were dated from 1991, with handwritten additions from various years since. Emergency Protocol 1. During communication loss exceeding 30 minutes, assume all standard protocols remain in effect. Continue standard operations until communication is restored or relief arrives. Emergency Protocol 2. During power failure, activate the emergency generator located in the supply closet. The generator will provide power for approximately 18 hours. Ration generator use by powering only essential equipment. 1 overhead light, the primary radio, and sensor 3. Emergency Protocol 3. If you are trapped in the station overnight, maintain waking vigilance until 4 in the morning. Between 4 and 5:30 in the morning, you may sleep in 30-minute intervals with an alarm. Do not sleep without an alarm. Do not sleep after 5:30 in the morning. Emergency Protocol 4. During extended shelter in place, the sounds from the lower tunnel may become continuous. They may increase in volume. They may include information that sounds accurate, names, dates, personal details. This information is not accurate. Do not engage with it. Do not correct it. Do not believe it. Emergency Protocol 5. If the north door becomes warm to the touch, above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, do not approach within 3 feet of the door. Use the thermal sensor to monitor temperature at regular intervals. If temperature exceeds 150 degrees, move to the emergency shelter at the south end of the station and barricade the entrance. I inventoried my supplies. 1 thermos of coffee, half full. 12 protein bars I'd started carrying despite the earlier rule. The amendment about food had been revised after Dawson's disappearance. 3 liters of water, a flashlight with fresh batteries, a backup flashlight, the emergency radio, 37 feet of rope, the tarp, the yellow clamps, 6 flares. I settled in to wait. The power failed at 11:23 in the morning. The fluorescent lights flickered, buzzed, and went dark. The equipment panels blinked off. The ventilation system fell silent. For a moment, the darkness was absolute. Then I heard the generator protocol in my head, stood, and felt my way to the supply closet. The generator was where the protocol said it would be. A Honda portable unit, red, with a pull start mechanism. It took 3 tries to start in the cold air. I powered the overhead light, the radio, and sensor 3. Everything else stayed dark. At 11:31, I logged my first emergency reading. Sensor 3, 68 degrees, normal. The radio produced only static. At 12 noon, the sounds began. They started as they always did. Footsteps in the lower tunnel. That same slow rhythm. But they didn't stay in the lower tunnel. Within minutes, I heard them in the walls, in the ceiling, circling the monitoring station from all directions. Step, step, pause. Step, step, pause. I logged the time and continued my work. At 12:17, the footsteps stopped and a voice spoke. It was my mother's voice. "David," she said. "David, where are you?" I stopped breathing. My mother had died 11 months ago. I had held her hand in the hospital. I had watched the monitors flatline. I had signed the paperwork. "David, I'm lost. I can't find my way. Please help me." Her voice was exactly right. The timbre, the cadence, the slight rasp from decades of smoking. It was her voice, perfectly recreated, coming from somewhere behind the north door. I picked up the thermos. I described it to myself. Stainless steel, 16 ounces, blue cap with a pressure seal. "David, why won't you answer me? Are you angry with me? I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry for leaving." Dented on the left side, warm to the touch. "Please, David, it's so dark here. I'm scared. I've never been scared like this before." 12 rotations from closed to open, vacuum-sealed interior. The voice continued for 43 minutes. It knew things, specific things, private things. It knew about the time I broke her vase when I was 8 and blamed the cat. It knew about the money I'd borrowed for her medical bills. It knew about the argument we'd had 3 days before she died, the things I'd said that I couldn't take back. But it also made mistakes. It called her house in Bozeman the Yellow House. It was white. It referenced a dog named Chester. We'd never had a dog named Chester. It said she was proud of me for finishing law school. I'd never gone to law school. The protocol was right. The information sounded accurate, but it wasn't. It was assembled from something that had access to fragments of truth, filling in the gaps with guesses. I did not respond. I did not engage. At 1 in the afternoon, the voice stopped. At 1:04 in the afternoon, the knocking began. It came from the north door. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. Pause. 1 knock. The emergency relief signal. "Station 11 relief," a voice said. Mackie's voice, perfectly replicated. "Emergency override. Open the north door for equipment extraction." I checked the thermal reading on the door. 61 degrees, normal range. But the amendment said relief required 2 independent radio contacts on different channels. I had no radio contact at all. "Ellison," Mackie's voice said. "This is a direct order. We need to extract the sensors before the power damage spreads. Open the door now." I keyed the radio. Static. "Ellison, open the door." I did not open the door. The knocking continued for 18 minutes. Different patterns, different rhythms. Sometimes fast and frantic. Sometimes slow and deliberate. Sometimes just a single knock, repeated at irregular intervals. Then it stopped. At 1:22 in the afternoon, I heard something new. Footsteps in the monitoring station itself. Not from the walls. Not from the ceiling. From the floor behind me, from the direction of the supply closet, where the generator hummed its constant mechanical rhythm. I did not turn around. I kept my eyes on sensor 3 and began counting backward from 100, 99, 98, 97. The footsteps moved closer. I could hear them clearly now, small, dry, like paper or dead leaves. 93, 92, 91. Something touched the back of my leg, 87, 86. The touch was light, exploratory, like fingers testing the texture of fabric. 79, 78. The touch withdrew. The footsteps moved away. 64, 63. The sound faded toward the north door. When I reached 0, I opened my eyes. The station was empty. I was alone. At 2 in the afternoon, the sounds from the lower tunnel resumed at full intensity. Multiple voices now. A chorus of them, men, women, children, all speaking at once. They called names I didn't recognize. They pleaded for help. They laughed. They cried. They screamed. And beneath the voices, always, those footsteps. Step, step, pause. Step, step, pause. Circling without end. I covered my ears and focused on the equipment cabinet. The cabinet is steel, painted gray, 42 inches tall, 18 inches deep. 3 shelves. The logbook sits on the middle shelf. The thermal sensor is on the bottom shelf beside the backup radio. The voices continued until 2:45, exactly on schedule. Then silence. I lowered my hands and checked my watch. My shirt was soaked with sweat despite the cold. My hands trembled when I picked up the pen to log my readings. 14 sigateg on a 14:45. Sounds at maximum intensity. Multiple voice manifestations. Maintain protocol 3. No breaches. The afternoon stretched into evening. I completed my readings, monitored the generator's fuel level, and watched the thermal sensor on the north door. At 4:17 in the afternoon, the temperature began to rise. 62 degrees, 68, 74. By 4:30, it had reached 91 degrees. I moved to the south end of the station, keeping the door in my peripheral vision, but not looking directly at it. The emergency shelter was a small alcove with a steel door of its own. Thinner than the north door, but with a working lock. By 5 in the afternoon, the north door was at 112 degrees. I could feel the heat from 12 feet away. The sounds returned, not voices this time, but something else. A low, sustained vibration that I felt in my chest more than heard. It resonated through the walls, the floor, the equipment cabinets. I retreated to the emergency shelter and closed the door behind me. The space was small, barely 6 feet by 8 feet, with a cot, a chemical toilet, a shelf of emergency rations, and a small ventilation shaft that led to the surface. I locked the door and sat on the cot. At 5:23 in the afternoon, I heard something testing the north door. Not knocking, not scratching, testing. Methodical pressure against the hinges, the frame, the lock mechanism. Evaluating. Then I heard footsteps, heavy ones, not the small scuttling thing from before, moving through the main monitoring station. They stopped at various points, paused, and moved on. I tracked their progress by sound, equipment cabinet, supply closet, sensor 4, sensor 2. They stopped outside the emergency shelter door. Silence. Then a voice, calm, professional, and perfectly human. Station 11, this is Carver. I'm here for the emergency extraction. Open the door. Carver worked nights. Carver would not arrive until 6 in the evening at the earliest, and Carver would know the code word. What's today's code word? I asked through the door. Silence. The code word is granite, the voice said. Today's code word was serpentine. I had received it in the morning briefing before the storm hit. That's incorrect, I said. I can't open the door. The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Then the voice spoke again, And this time, it wasn't Carver's voice. It wasn't anyone's voice. It was a sound like words assembled from pieces of other sounds, fragments of speech pulled apart and recombined into something that approximated human communication. You will open the door. The door shuddered, not from a knock or a blow, from pressure distributed evenly across the entire surface. Eventually, you will open the door. The pressure increased. The hinges groaned. We have waited a long time. We can wait longer. Then the pressure released. The footsteps retreated. The vibration faded. I sat in the dark and counted my breaths. At 5:53 in the afternoon, 7 minutes before standard shift end, I heard the access hatch open. Real footsteps this time. Human footsteps. Multiple people descending the ladder. "Station 11, this is Mackie," a voice called. "Recovery team entering. Ellison, respond verbally if you are conscious and uncompromised." I knew the protocol. Verbal response to recovery team. Code word verification. Badge number. "I'm here," I called. "Code word verification. What's tomorrow's word?" A pause. Then Mackie's voice. "Tomorrow's word is obsidian. My badge is K442. Carver's badge is K3309. We're coming to the emergency shelter." I unlocked the door. Mackie stood in the doorway, wearing a heavy parka and carrying a high-powered flashlight. Behind her, Carver held an equipment case and a coil of rope. "Are you injured?" Mackie asked. "No." "Did you maintain protocols?" "Yes." She nodded. "Then let's get you out of here." The extraction took 20 minutes. The storm had buried the access hatch under 3 feet of snow, and the recovery team had to dig it out. The north door was still warm when we passed it. 87 degrees, according to Carver's thermal scanner. "It's cooling," Carver said. "Whatever was pushing through is backing off." I didn't ask what was pushing through. I didn't want to know. Outside, the blizzard had softened to heavy snowfall. The forest was silent except for the wind. I climbed into the back of the recovery vehicle and sat with my head in my hands while Mackie drove us back to the annex. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep for the next 3 nights. On the 4th day after the siege, Mackie called me into her office. "You performed well," she said. "Better than most first-year monitors. You maintained protocols under extended pressure, including the emergency shelter protocol that hasn't been tested in actual conditions since 2008. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. "I'm promoting you to senior monitor," she continued. "You'll train the replacements. You'll update the protocols based on your observations. You'll answer the questions that new hires ask." She paused. "And you'll tell them what I told you. Follow the rules. Don't improvise. Don't rationalize." "What about Dawson?" Mackie's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. "Dawson is still listed as missing. The search has been suspended indefinitely. Will they ever find her?" "I don't know. We've never recovered anyone who broke Protocol 7. The tunnel goes deep, much deeper than any of our surveys have mapped. Whatever takes people down there." She stopped, shook her head. "We don't know where it takes them. We don't know what it does with them. We just know they don't come back." I spent the next 2 weeks writing new amendments. I based them on everything I'd experienced during the siege. The voice mimicry, the thermal escalation, the testing of the door. Every anomaly became a new rule. Every near breach became a new warning. Amendment M. If the north door's thermal reading exceeds 90 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 30 minutes, relocate to the emergency shelter and seal the entrance. Do not return to the main station until thermal readings return to normal range. Amendment N. Voices heard during emergency conditions will have access to personal information about station personnel. This information may include childhood memories, family details, and private conversations. The accuracy of this information does not indicate that the voice is human. Do not engage, regardless of content. Amendment O. If an entity uses the correct emergency entry signal and provides a code word, verify the word against the current day's authorized code. If the entity provides yesterday's code or any previous day's code, do not interact further. Move to a secured position and wait. Amendment P. The small shape may now be observed during daylight hours. It remains non-hostile but should be monitored. If the shape approaches within 5 feet, close your eyes and count backward from 100. If it approaches during a time when the north door's thermal reading is elevated, the count must extend to 200. Amendment Q. During extended shelter-in-place conditions, document all anomalies in the red logbook with precise timestamps. This documentation is critical for protocol refinement. Future personnel may survive because of your observations. I handed the amendments to Mackie. She read them twice, made 2 small corrections, and added them to the official protocol package. "You understand now," she said, "why we do things the way we do." "I understand that the rules work. I don't understand why." "Neither do we. The geologists say there's nothing unusual about the geothermal activity here. The seismologists say the underground readings are normal. The biologists say there's no fauna native to the region that matches what we've observed." She set the papers down. "But for 37 years, every monitor who followed the protocols survived their contract. Every monitor who didn't. That's not superstition. That's data." My first trainee arrived on a Wednesday in late November. His name was Chen, and he was 23 years old, fresh out of a geology program at the University of Wyoming. He'd applied for the position because he was interested in geothermal research and needed to pay off student loans. I gave him the same folder I'd received on my first day. I watched him read the protocols with the same skeptical expression I'd worn. "This is serious?" he asked. "Yes. Someone actually follows these rules every day. Every day, for the entire shift, without exception. And if you don't?" I told him about Dawson. I told him about the sounds during the 2 o'clock window. I told him about the thermal escalation on the north door during the blizzard. I didn't tell him about my mother's voice. Some things were too personal to share. Chen listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "So we don't know what's down there," he said finally. "No. And the rules are just trial and error? Someone does something wrong and dies, so we make a new rule." That's one way to put it. What's the other way? I thought about Mackie's words. The rules are a map of the boundary. Everything inside the rules is safe, or safe enough. Everything outside the rules is where people disappear. Chen nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll follow the rules." "Good. And when something happens that isn't covered by the rules, because it will, you document it. You log every detail. And then we add a new rule so the next person knows." He started his first shift the next morning. I monitored from the annex, listening to his radio checks, tracking his log entries. At 2 in the afternoon, the sounds began, and I heard his voice waver slightly on the radio check. But he followed the protocols. At 6 in the evening, he emerged from the hatch, pale and shaken but intact. "It's real," he said. "Whatever's down there, It's real. Yes. How do you do this? Every day, knowing what's there, knowing it's trying to get in. I thought about the question for a long time before answering. Because the rules work, I said. And because someone has to watch. Someone has to document. Someone has to keep the boundary intact so the next person has a chance. Winter settled over Yellowstone. The snow accumulated. The roads closed. The tourists disappeared. And beneath the frozen surface, in the tunnels that wound deeper than anyone had ever mapped, something continued to circle. Something continued to wait. I worked my shifts. I followed the protocols. I trained the new monitors and updated the amendments and logged my observations in the Red Book. And every day, at 2 p.m, I covered my ears and described objects to myself, while voices called my name from the darkness below. Stainless steel, 16 ounces, blue cap. The rules work. That's what I tell myself. That's what I tell the trainees. That's what I'll tell whoever reads this if they ever find these records. The rules work. Follow them exactly. Don't improvise. Don't rationalize. Don't assume you understand, because the boundary is thinner than you think, and what waits on the other side has been waiting for a very long time. It can wait longer, but it doesn't have to. The spring thaw came in April, late and reluctant. The snowpack began to recede. The roads reopened. The first tourists of the season filtered into the park, cameras ready, completely unaware of the network of monitoring stations scattered through the backcountry. I had been at Station 11 for 7 months. In that time, I had documented 43 anomalous events, written 12 new amendments, and trained 4 replacement monitors. Chen had transferred to a different position after 8 weeks, not because he'd broken protocol, but because the psychological strain had become too much. He'd started hearing the voices even when he wasn't at the station. Mackey had approved his transfer without comment. The replacement was a woman named Torres, a 10-year Park Service veteran who'd requested the position specifically after reading the declassified incident reports. She wanted to know what was down there. She thought understanding the threat was better than simply following rules designed to avoid it. I tried to explain why she was wrong. The protocols exist because people died figuring them out, I said. Every rule is a gravestone. Someone had to make the mistake so the rule could be written. But what if we're just treating symptoms? Torres said. What if there's a way to actually address the cause, seal the tunnels, collapse the lower chambers, cut off whatever access they have to the surface? They tried that in 1994. The result was the November incident. What November incident? I pulled the file from the cabinet. It was thin. Most of the documentation had been lost or destroyed, but the summary was enough. In November of 1994, a team of geologists and engineers had attempted to seal the lower tunnel network beneath what was then Station 7. They'd used controlled explosive charges to collapse key access points, believing this would eliminate the source of the anomalies. For 3 days, the stations went silent. No sounds, no thermal fluctuations, no anomalous readings. The team had celebrated. On the 4th day, Station 7 collapsed into a sinkhole that hadn't existed on any geological survey. 3 monitors on duty were never recovered. Stations 4, 9, and 12 reported simultaneous thermal spikes exceeding 300 degrees Fahrenheit. The north door at Station 4 melted from its hinges, and the sounds, when they returned, were different. They weren't just voices anymore. They were crowds, hundreds of voices, all speaking at once, all saying the same thing. We remember. The sealing project was abandoned. The protocols were revised. A new rule was added, classified at the highest level. Do not attempt to block, seal, or obstruct any access point to the lower tunnel network. Do not restrict the movement of whatever uses those access points. Observation and avoidance only. Containment has been attempted. Containment failed. Torres read the file 3 times. When she looked up, her expression had changed. They got angry, she said. When we tried to lock them out, they got angry. That's one interpretation. What's the other interpretation? That they were always angry, that the protocols are the only thing keeping them from expressing it. Torres worked Station 11 for 3 weeks before the incident. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, during the 2 o'clock window. I was at the annex monitoring radio traffic when I heard her voice break the usual pattern. Annex, Station 11. I need immediate guidance. I keyed the response. Station 11, go ahead. The sound started early, 1:47, and they're not coming from the lower tunnel. I felt the familiar cold settle into my stomach. Explain. They're coming from above me, from the access hatch. Something is on the surface, directly above the hatch, and it's speaking. This wasn't covered in the protocols. The sounds came from below, always from below. The lower tunnel, the north door, the depths, never from above. What is it saying? A long pause. Then Torres's voice, carefully controlled. It's saying it wants to trade. I looked at Mackie, who had moved to stand beside my station. Her face was pale. Trade what? I asked. It's saying it will give us Dawson back in exchange for access. My hand tightened on the radio. Dawson had been missing for 4 months. The search had been suspended. She was listed as presumed dead. Torres, do not engage. Do not respond to the voice. Maintain silence and wait for instructions. Ellison, it knows things. It knows about her last log entry. It knows where she went. It says she's still alive down there, and if we just open the hatch, it will let her come up. Do not open the hatch. Torres, do you understand? Do not open the hatch. It's showing me something on my phone. I don't know how. I didn't turn my phone on, but there's a video playing. Don't look at it. It's Dawson. It's Dawson, and she's talking to someone. She's in the tunnel, the lower tunnel, and there's something behind her, but I can't quite. The radio clicked off. I tried to raise Torres for 15 minutes. No response. At 2:23, Mackie ordered a recovery team. I was on it. Me, Chen, who had returned for emergency duty despite his transfer, and a ranger named Okonkwo, who had experience with the incident response protocols. We reached Station 11 at 2:47. The access hatch was open. Snow had melted in a perfect circle around the hatch, 10 feet in diameter, the ground bare and steaming. We could feel the heat rising from below. Torres! I called down the shaft. Station 11, respond. Silence. I descended the ladder first. The monitoring station was empty. The equipment was running. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The north door was open. I stopped at the base of the ladder and stared at the doorway. Beyond it, the lower tunnel stretched into darkness. Darkness that seemed to move, to breathe, to wait. On the floor beside the door, I found Torres's radio, her flashlight, and her logbook. The logbook was open to her last entry. 2:14 p.m., voice above hatch, offers trade, says Dawson alive, showing video on phone. I can see her. I can see her walking. She doesn't look hurt. She's waving. She's waving at me and smiling. She wants me to come get her. I think I should go get her. I think the protocols are wrong about this. I think sometimes you have to help your friends, I think the entry ended there. I picked up the logbook and carried it back to the surface. We did not search the lower tunnel. Protocol was clear. No one enters without authorization, and authorization would not be granted. Torres was listed as missing, presumed dead. Station 11 was closed for 72 hours while a review team assessed the incident. I sat in my cabin and wrote the amendment that would carry her name into the protocol history. Amendment R, Torres Incident, April 2026. If voices or sounds originate from any direction other than the lower tunnel, including above the station from the access hatch, or from the ventilation system, do not investigate. Treat all non-tunnel sounds as hostile regardless of content. If the sounds include offers, trades, or exchanges of any kind, maintain radio silence and shelter in place until the sounds stop. Do not engage with offers. Whatever is offered is not what it appears to be. Whatever is shown is not what it appears to be. Trust the protocols. I added a subnote, not part of the official amendment, but included in my personal log. Torres saw something on her phone. She believed what she saw. She opened the door because she thought she could save someone. She was wrong. Remember this. Believing what you see is not the same as understanding what you see. Down there, they can show you anything. They can show you exactly what you need to see to make you open the door. That's why the protocols don't ask you to understand. They ask you to comply. Summer came. The days grew long. Tourists filled the park, hiking the trails, photographing the geysers, completely oblivious to the network of monitoring stations that ring the geothermal hot zones. I trained 3 more replacements. I updated the protocols. I worked my shifts at Station 11. The sounds continued. The thermal fluctuations continued. The small shapes continued their reconnaissance. But something had changed since the Torres incident. The voices were more focused now, more personal. They didn't just call names randomly. They called my name. They knew my schedule. They knew when my guard was lowest. At 2:07 on a Thursday afternoon, my mother's voice returned. "David, I'm so proud of you. You've done such good work. You followed all the rules. But it's time to come home now. The rules don't apply to you anymore. You've earned the exception." I covered my ears. "I know you can hear me, sweetheart. I know you're trying not to listen, but I need to tell you something important, something only you can hear. Stainless steel, 16 ounces, blue cap." When I was dying, I wasn't alone. Something was there with me. Something came up from beneath the hospital. It made me a promise, David. It promised to take care of you if I would show it the way. And I did. I showed it everything. I showed it your face, your voice, your memories. I gave it everything it needed to find you. Dented on the left side, warm to the touch. Don't you understand? I brought it to you. That's why it knows so much. That's why it calls your name. Because I gave you to it. Because I wanted you to be with me forever. Down in the dark, where nothing ends. 12 rotations from closed to open. The voice stopped. I checked my watch. 2:44. 1 minute early. I logged the incident in the red book. 2:4 p.m. Voice manifestation. Maternal. Content highly personalized. Claims of connection to subject's deceased mother. Claims of deliberate targeting. Content designed to induce guilt and compliance. Maintained protocol. Did not engage. Voice ended. 1 minute before standard window closure. I added a note. Voice is now adapting strategy in real time. Shortened interaction window suggests awareness of protocol timing. Possible testing of new approaches. Recommend increased vigilance during 2:45 window. Recommend psychological screening for long-term monitors. Content is becoming difficult to disregard. Mackie read the entry that evening. She didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, "How long can you keep doing this?" "As long as necessary." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have." She nodded slowly. The protocols require senior monitors to take mandatory leave after 1 year of continuous service. You're at 8 months, 4 more months, and you'll be required to take 60 days off. No contact with the station, no protocol review, no amendments. And then what? And then you decide if you want to come back. What if I decide not to? Then we train someone new and hope they last as long as you have. I looked at the logbook in my hands. Red cover, worn edges, pages filled with my handwriting. 8 months of observations, 8 months of compliance, 8 months of listening to something call my name in my mother's voice. "I'll come back," I said. "Someone has to watch." The fall equinox arrived. The days shortened. The tourists left. I worked my shifts. I followed the protocols. I trained the replacements. And every day, at 2 in the afternoon, I closed my eyes and described objects to myself, while something in the darkness below tried to find the exact combination of words that would make me open the door. It hasn't found them yet, but it's getting closer. I can feel it. On the morning of October 15th, I found a note in the red logbook. It wasn't in my handwriting. It wasn't in any handwriting I recognized. It was block letters, precise and regular, like something trying to imitate human penmanship. "We have been patient. We have watched. We have learned your rules. Soon we will show you ours." I photographed the note, documented it in my log, and reported it to Mackie. She added a new amendment, Amendment S. "If you find any written material in the station that you did not place there, notes, messages, drawings, or documents of any kind, do not read beyond the first sentence. Photograph the material, document its location, and seal it in an evidence bag. Do not discuss the content with other personnel. Do not attempt to respond to or communicate with whatever left the material." I followed the amendment. I sealed the note. I did not read beyond the first sentence, but I already knew what it said. They were watching. They were learning. And sooner or later, they would try something new. On October 31st, Halloween, though no one at the station celebrated, the something new arrived. I was at Station 11, halfway through my shift, when the thermal reading on the north door began to rise. This wasn't unusual. Thermal fluctuations happened. The protocol was clear. Monitor the reading. Relocate if it exceeds 90 degrees. But the reading didn't stop at 90. It climbed to 100, then 120, then 150. I moved to the emergency shelter and sealed the door. The reading continued to climb. 175, 200, 250. At 300 degrees, the metal of the north door began to glow. I watched through the small window in the shelter door as the gray steel turned cherry red, then orange, then white. The air in the monitoring station shimmered with heat haze. And then the door melted. Not fell, melted. The steel flowed downward like wax, pooling on the concrete floor, leaving a glowing orange archway that opened into the lower tunnel. Through the archway, I saw darkness. And in the darkness, I saw shapes. Not the small shapes, the reconnaissance shapes. These were larger, taller. They stood at the edge of the light cast by the melting door, barely visible, watching. There were many of them. I keyed my radio. Annex, Station 11, emergency, north door breach, multiple entities visible, request immediate evac. Static. I tried again. Annex, this is Ellison. North door is gone. There's something in the tunnel. Multiple somethings. They're not coming through yet, but they're watching. Request instructions. More static. And then a voice, not from the radio, from the archway. We have been patient. The shapes moved, not toward me, toward each other. They gathered at the threshold of the archway, clustering, overlapping, until they formed a single mass of darkness that filled the opening. We have learned your rules. Now you will learn ours. The darkness spoke with 100 voices, the voices I had heard for 8 months, all speaking at once. Rule 1, you will not leave. The hatch has been sealed. I heard a distant clang from the access hatch, the sound of metal on metal. Rule 2, you will not hide. The shelter door is insufficient. I looked at the shelter door. It was trembling. The metal was warming under my palm. Rule 3, you will listen. We will tell you what we are. We will tell you why we wait. We will tell you what happens to those who open the doors. The darkness began to move, not into the station, sideways, spreading along the walls, the ceiling, the floor. It flowed like water, like ink, coating every surface. We are the ones who were here before the fire and the stone, before the water and the ice. We were here, and we will be here when everything above is gone. The darkness reached the shelter door. I watched it seep through the gap at the bottom, a thin tendril of absolute black. We do not want to leave. We do not need to leave. We want you to come down. We want you to join the others. We want you to understand that there is no up and no down, only in and out. And you are already in. The tendril touched my boot. Cold. Impossibly cold. The cold of deep caves and ancient stone, and the spaces between stars. Open your eyes. Look at what you are. I did not open my eyes. I had closed them when the darkness entered the shelter. I was counting. 97, 96, 95. Counting won't help you. The rules don't work anymore. We know the rules. We wrote half of them. We showed your predecessors exactly what to avoid. And they wrote it down like good little scribes. And now the map you follow is the map we drew. 82. 81. You think compliance protects you. It doesn't. It contains you. It keeps you in place until we're ready. We've been watching. We've been learning. We've been waiting for the right monitor. Someone stubborn enough to follow the rules, smart enough to document everything, and scared enough to never stop believing. 67. 66. You're perfect. You've given us everything we need. Every amendment, every protocol, every note in the Red Book. You've mapped the boundary for us, and now we know exactly how to cross it. The cold spread up my leg. My boot was frozen to the floor. 49, 48. Count all you want. When you reach 0, we'll still be here. When you open your eyes, you'll see what we really look like, and then you'll understand. 31, 30. Your mother understood. In the hospital, in the dark, when something came up from below and offered her a deal. She didn't even hesitate. She gave us your name, your face, your fears. She traded you for 3 more months of breath, and she spent those months knowing what she'd done. 19, 18. Don't you want to ask her about it? Don't you want to hear her explain? She's down here, David. She's waiting for you. All you have to do is open your eyes and look. 8, 7, 6. Fine, keep counting. It doesn't matter. You'll run out of numbers eventually. And when you do, 0. I open my eyes. The shelter was empty. The door was intact. The darkness was gone. I checked my watch, 3:17 in the afternoon. I had been counting for 43 minutes. The monitoring station was undamaged. The north door was solid gray steel, locked and cool to the touch. The equipment hummed normally. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Nothing had happened, or something had happened that left no physical trace. I sat at the equipment cabinet and wrote in the red logbook for 2 hours. I documented everything, every word, every sensation, every impossible detail. I noted the times, the temperatures, the specific content of what the voices had said, and I added a final note. I don't know if this incident was real. I don't know if the door melted, if the darkness spoke, if anything physical occurred. But I know what I experienced, I know what I felt, and I know that the protocols, as written, did not prevent this contact. Either the rules have gaps we haven't mapped, or they've learned to work within the rules. Either way, the boundary has shifted. We need to map the new line. I filed the report with Mackie that evening. She read it twice, 3 times, 4 times. Her face was pale when she looked up. "They talk to you," she said. "Not just voices calling your name, an actual conversation." Yes, that's new. In 37 years, we've never had a documented conversation. "What does it mean?" Mackie was quiet for a long moment. "It means we need to rewrite everything," she said. The protocols were designed for observation and avoidance. They assumed the boundary was fixed, that as long as we didn't cross it, they couldn't either. She set the report down. But if they can talk to us now, really talk, then the boundary isn't fixed anymore. It's shifting, and we don't know where it's going to stop. I spent the next 2 weeks working with Mackie on new protocols. We called them the Deep Contact Amendments, a series of rules specifically designed for the scenario I had experienced. They included provisions for psychological countermeasures, for verification procedures to confirm reality after contact, and for documentation standards that would help future monitors recognize the signs of an approaching conversation event. The key amendment was the last, Amendment T, Deep Contact Protocol. If you experience direct communication with an entity, not just sounds, but structured conversation with specific content, you must immediately file a full report and submit to psychological evaluation. Direct communication events are rare and indicate elevated entity interest in specific personnel. Personnel who experience direct communication should be rotated to a different position within 30 days. Extended exposure following direct communication has historically resulted in deteriorating compliance and eventual breach. I read the amendment and understood what it meant. "You're transferring me," I said. "I'm protecting you and protecting the station. Whatever happened down there, it was personal. They spoke to you, specifically you, about things only you would know. That means they've marked you. And if you stay, they'll keep trying until they find the right combination of words to make you open that door." "What if I want to stay?" Mackie looked at me with something like sadness. "That's exactly why you can't. The best monitors are the ones who want to stay, who feel responsibility, who believe they're the only ones who can do the job right." She paused. "Those are the ones they want most, because those are the ones who will eventually convince themselves that opening the door is the right thing to do." My last shift at Station 11 was on November 15th. I arrived at 6:03 in the morning, sealed the hatch at 6:11, and began my rounds. The equipment worked, the readings were normal, the morning passed quietly. At 2 in the afternoon, the sounds began, but this time they were different. No footsteps, no breathing, No voices calling my name. Just silence. Absolute, perfect silence. I stood at the equipment cabinet and listened. The fluorescent lights had stopped buzzing. The equipment had stopped humming. Even my own breathing seemed muted, distant. And then, from beyond the north door, a single word. Goodbye. Not in my mother's voice. Not in any voice I recognized. Just a word. A farewell. I didn't respond. I logged the anomaly and continued my rounds. At 6 p.m, I completed shutdown procedures and climbed the ladder for the last time. I sealed the access hatch, walked to my truck, and drove back to the annex. Mackie was waiting with my transfer paperwork. Station 11 will be covered by Torres's replacement, she said. Chen is coming back. He's been cleared for return duty. He'll take the morning shift. Someone new will take nights. I signed the papers. Where am I going? Glacier National Park, office position, protocol documentation. You'll be training new monitors remotely, updating the master protocol files, answering questions. She handed me a folder. Your expertise is too valuable to lose. We just can't have you at a station anymore. I took the folder. One more thing, Mackie said. The red logbook, the one you've been using for the past year. I need you to transcribe it. Every entry, every amendment, every observation. Put it in the master files where future monitors can access it. All of it. All of it. The personal stuff, too. The conversations. The things they said about your mother. She met my eyes. Someone else might hear similar things. They need to know that the voices lie, that the information sounds accurate but isn't, that engaging is always a mistake. I nodded. I spent the next 3 days transcribing the logbook, every entry, every amendment, every note. And I added a final section, a summary for whoever reads the file next. My name is David Ellison. I worked at Yellowstone Monitoring Station 11 for 1 year. During that time, I documented 67 anomalous events, wrote 18 amendments to the standard protocols, and experienced 1 direct communication event. I followed the rules, every day, without exception. And I survived. I don't know what lives in the tunnels beneath Yellowstone. I don't know what they want, or where they come from, or why they wait. But I know this. The rules work. Follow them exactly. Don't improvise. Don't rationalize. Don't assume you understand what you're dealing with. The voices will call your name. The voices will know things about you. The voices will offer you things you want, answers, closure, people you've lost. Don't listen. The door stays closed. The boundary stays intact. And you stay on this side until your shift ends. That's the job. That's all the job has ever been. Good luck. I signed the document and filed it in the Master Protocol Archive. Then I drove to Glacier, started my new position, and waited. It's been 3 months now. I work in an office. I answer questions from monitors at active stations across the park system. I update protocols based on their reports. And sometimes, late at night, I hear things outside my window. Not voices, not footsteps, just silence. The same absolute perfect silence I heard on my last day at Station 11. I don't know what it means. I don't know if they followed me, or if they can follow, or if I'm imagining things. But I've started keeping a new logbook, just in case. And I've written a new rule, the first rule for whatever comes next. If you're reading this, it means I'm not able to answer your questions anymore. It means the boundary has shifted again, and I was on the wrong side when it moved. Don't come looking for me. Don't try to understand what happened. Just read the protocols, follow them exactly, and keep watching. Someone has to watch. Someone has to document. Someone has to keep the boundary intact because they're patient. They've been waiting for a very long time, and sooner or later, someone opens the door.